The company he started in a rented office with almost no money is now one of the most valuable technology firms on Earth. And the man himself has, at various points, been near the very top of the list of the richest people alive. And he did it selling something almost nobody outside of a server room has ever thought about for 1 second.
Databases. That's the word you're circling around. He got fabulously wealthy selling databases.
Databases, which is the least glamorous word in the English language, and yet here we are.
And that gap right there, the boring product, the wildly unboring man, that's the whole story, isn't it? I'm Daniel Hart, and I promise you before we're done, I'm going to tell you about the yacht and the fighter jet and the Hawaiian island, because all three are real and all three are ridiculous.
An island! Plural things there, Daniel. We'll get to them. I'm Ruth Calloway. I'll be keeping us honest and moving. Hugh, introduce yourself and try not to make databases sound as dull as they actually are.
I'm Hugh Bramwell, and I would gently push back on dull. I spent a chunk of my career reading annual reports, and I can tell you the dull-sounding companies are frequently the ones quietly running the world. Oracle is exactly that. But yes, I'll bring the receipts. Ruth brings the thread, Daniel brings the yacht.
I do bring the yacht.
So let's rewind all the way, because the beginning is not what you'd expect for a man who ends up owning an island.
No, it really isn't. Lawrence Joseph Ellison, born in New York City in the mid-1940s to a young single mother. And when he was a baby, he got pneumonia, and she made the call to send him to Chicago to be raised by her aunt and uncle. So he's adopted, essentially, by relatives. Grows up on the south side of Chicago.
And this is the part I find quietly telling. His adoptive father, by most accounts, was not a warm man toward him. There's a story Ellison has told over the years that his father told him he'd never amount to anything.
Whew!
Now, I'd hedge slightly, because these origin stories get polished with retelling, but the shape of it is consistent across what he said publicly. Not an easy childhood, not a wealthy one.
And there's something in that, isn't there? A father who says you'll amount to nothing, and a son who then spends 60 years amounting to as much as one human being possibly can. You almost don't need a psychology degree.
It's the origin story of half the comic book villains, Ruth.
I'd resist overreading it, but I take the point. The neighbourhood mattered too. This wasn't wealth. This was a modest apartment, and the adoptive father had lost money in the crash years earlier, so there was a wariness about the world baked in.
And he doesn't finish college twice. He's at the University of Illinois, his adoptive mother dies, he leaves, enrolls again later at Chicago, leaves again. So this is a man with no degree, drifting out to California in the early 70s with not much of a plan.
Which I love, honestly, because the myth of the tech founder is the whiz kid with the perfect trajectory. This is a guy in his late 20s who's basically figuring it out as he goes.
He's doing odd programming jobs, self-taught mostly, picks up coding, works at a few companies around the Bay Area, and that's where he stumbles into the thing that changes everything. And it comes out of a research paper.
And I'd underline self-taught, because it colours everything after. He isn't a man who reveres institutions or credentials. He dropped out of 2 of them. When later he loves to needle the buttoned-up giants of the industry, some of that is a genuine outsider's chip on the shoulder. This is the piece I really wanted to get right, because it's the hinge of the whole story. In 1970, a researcher at IBM named Edgar Codd published a paper laying out what's called the relational model for databases.
Okay, and for the rest of us who don't live in a server room, Hugh, what does that actually mean?
Right. Think about how you'd store information before. It was rigid, data locked into specific structures, and if you wanted to ask a question the system hadn't been designed for, tough luck. Codd's idea was to organise everything into simple tables. rows and columns, and crucially, you could ask questions across those tables in a flexible way, using a query language.
Tables? Like a spreadsheet, kinda?
Close enough for our purposes, yes. The point is, it separated the way data was stored from the way you asked about it. Elegant, powerful. And here's the twist. IBM, where COD worked, was slow to turn it into a real commercial product.
Give me a picture of the old way, though. What breaks in practice before this?
Imagine your bank stores customers one way and accounts another way, and the two are welded together by a programmer who's long since left. You want a new report. Show me everyone in this region with a balance over a certain amount. Under the old model, that could mean rewriting programs. Under COD's model, you just ask. That flexibility is the whole prize.
So it's less about storing more and more about asking freely.
Exactly right. And the freedom to ask is what businesses will pay almost anything for.
They sat on their own idea.
They rather did. Big company, existing products, making money. No rush to disrupt themselves.
And that's the opening Ellison drives a truck through. He reads about this work, he sees the potential, and he and two colleagues, Bob Miner and Ed Oates, start a company in 1977. Tiny! A couple $1,000s of their own money.
What was it called? Because it wasn't Oracle at first, right?
Correct. It went through a couple of names early on. The name Oracle actually came from a project they'd worked on, reportedly a CIA contract, codenamed Oracle, and the name stuck and eventually became the company's name.
I love that the spy movie detail is the boring true bit.
And note the division of labour there. Miner was the deep engineer, the one who actually built the thing work. Ellison was the vision and the voice and the sales edge. He was not the best programmer in the room, and I don't think he'd claim to be. He knew what he was, and he was the front man.
So walk me through the audacity here. IBM invents the concept, and these three guys in California decide they're going to beat IBM to selling it?
That's exactly it. They built a commercial relational database and got it to market ahead of IBM's own version. And they leaned hard into a piece of standardization, a query language called SQL, which some people pronounce SQL. That became the common language for talking to these databases, and Oracle bet on it early.
And this is where you start to see the Ellison who becomes famous. Because the product mattered, sure, but the selling was the thing. Oracle in the 80s was a sales machine. Aggressive, hungry.
Define aggressive.
Salespeople pushed to close deals hard, quarterly targets that were brutal, a real culture of get the contract signed, worry about the rest later. And in the early 90s, that caught up with them. There were serious accounting problems where revenue was being booked before it should have been.
How does that even happen, booking money you don't have?
The mechanics matter here. If a salesman signs a multi-year deal and the company records the whole value up front instead of over the life of the contract, the current quarter looks glorious. Do that across a hungry sales force chasing bonuses, and the reported numbers drift away from the actual cash coming in. It works, right up until it very publicly doesn't.
And the incentive did all the damage. If your entire culture rewards signing today, someone will always find a way to sign tomorrow's deal today.
This is well documented. Around 1990-91, Oracle had a genuine crisis. The stock collapsed, there was a restatement of earnings, the company came very close to the edge.
How close is very close?
Close enough that its survival was a real question, and I'd say this is one of the more interesting turns in Ellison's career, because a lot of founders don't come back from that. He brought in more disciplined management, cleaned up the finances, and the company not only survived, it came out the other side and grew enormously through the 90s.
And that's the pattern with him, right? Near death, then a bigger comeback. It happens more than once.
And to his credit, this is the part that surprised me, he didn't dig in and pretend nothing was wrong. He let real operators come in and impose the discipline he wasn't going to impose himself.
That's the underrated move. The showman knew when to hand the accounting to grown-ups. Plenty of founders would rather go down swinging than admit the books needed adults in the room.
I want to talk about what drives him, because you don't build something like Oracle on being mellow.
Oh, he is not mellow. Ellison runs on rivalry. He needs an enemy. First it was IBM, the giant he beat. Then over the years it's other software companies. It's famously Bill Gates and Microsoft.
The Gates rivalry is real, and it's instructive. For a long stretch, Ellison positioned himself as the anti-Gates. Microsoft was the desktop, the PC on every desk. Ellison pushed a different vision in the mid-90s, the idea that you didn't need a fat, expensive computer. You could have a cheaper, simpler machine that pulled everything from the network.
The network computer.
The network computer, yes. And I'll be measured here. As a product, it didn't work. It flopped commercially at the time.
Why did it flop, if the idea was sound?
Timing and pipes, mostly. The networks of the day were slow. Home connections were crawling, and the price gap between his simple machine and a real PC wasn't wide enough to overcome the fact that the PC just did more. People will pay a little extra to own the full thing rather than rent a stripped-down one over a wire that keeps stalling.
But here's what gets me. The idea wasn't wrong. It was early. Everything you do now on a browser, everything in the cloud, all of that is basically the network computer showing up 20 years late.
That's a fair reading. He was directionally right and commercially wrong, which in technology is a very particular kind of painful.
Directionally right, commercially wrong. That could be a tombstone for half of Silicon Valley.
Put it on a t-shirt.
I'd wear it.
You would not.
I'd wear it under a jacket.
And I think the rivalry is why he saw it at all. When your whole worldview is how do I attack Microsoft's stronghold, you go looking for the place they're weakest. And the answer was take the software off the desk they own and put it somewhere they don't. He was wrong on the year and right on the map.
Okay, but the growth in the 2000s isn't just databases anymore, is it? The company changes shape.
It changes shape dramatically. And this is where Ellison's appetite really shows. Oracle went on an acquisition spree, and the one that set the tone was the pursuit of a company called PeopleSoft in the early to mid-2000s.
This one's a great story because it's basically a hostile takeover done in slow motion, in public, for over a year. Oracle makes an offer to buy PeopleSoft. PeopleSoft's people do not want to be bought. They fight it tooth and nail.
There were regulators involved, lawsuits, the whole thing dragged on, and Ellison just would not let go. Eventually, Oracle won. It took over PeopleSoft for something on the order of $10 billion.
And why does he want it? What's he actually buying?
Customers, and the software those customers depend on to run their businesses. Payroll, human resources, that sort of thing. The strategy was, don't just sell the database underneath, own the applications on top of it too. Own more of the stack.
And once you own the applications a company runs its payroll on, they can't exactly walk away on a whim.
That's the quiet brilliance of it. Ripping out the software that runs your payroll is terrifying and expensive. So the more of a customer's operation you sit inside, the harder it is for them to ever leave. He wasn't just buying revenue, he was buying stickiness.
And then he does it again and again. Siebel, and then a huge one, Sun Microsystems at the end of the 2000s. And Sun's fascinating because that's where Oracle gets Java, the programming language, and a hardware business.
Roughly $7 billion for Sun, and it turned Oracle from a pure software company into one that also made the machines. Whether that hardware bet fully paid off is debatable, but it fit the philosophy. Control the whole thing.
So the through line from the scrappy startup to the giant is always take the bigger bite.
Take the bigger bite, and never be sentimental about it.
Right. I promised you the yacht. Can I have the yacht now?
You've earned the yacht.
So this is a man who, as the money got truly enormous, spent it in ways that are almost cartoonish. He's owned some of the largest private yachts in the world. He got seriously into competitive sailing, bankrolled a team that won the America's Cup, which is the pinnacle of the sport. And that is not a cheap hobby. We're talking a staggering amount of money poured into boats that go fast.
He's a licensed pilot, and he's owned fighter jets, a former military jet which there are genuine restrictions around, but he found a way. And the island? This is the one people don't believe.
He bought most of a Hawaiian island, Lanai. Not a resort on the island, the island, the bulk of it, in the early 2010s, reportedly for hundreds of millions of dollars.
You buy an island. What do you do with an island?
In his case, invest in it. The infrastructure, resorts, water systems, sustainability projects. He's talked about it as a kind of laboratory. Though, of course, if you own where thousands of people live and work, that raises real questions about power over their lives, which locals have voiced.
That's the part I keep snagging on. It's not an empty island. There are families there, jobs, a whole community.
Precisely. When one man owns the land, the water utility, and the biggest employer, ordinary disputes about a job or a lease stop being ordinary. The residents didn't choose him as a landlord. They woke up one day and had one. That's a genuine tension no amount of solar panels quite resolves.
And I think that's the tension with all the toys. It's easy to laugh, and it is funny.
It's very funny.
But it also tells you something true about him. This is a man for whom no is a temporary condition. Can't own a fighter jet? Watch me. Want an island? Buy the island.
There's a line people attribute to him. I'll be careful because I can't verify the exact wording, but the sentiment, roughly, is that it's not enough to win. Others have to lose. Whether he said it precisely that way, I won't swear to, but it captures the reputation.
And that's the thing about a persona that big. The quotes attach themselves to you whether you said them or not.
Precisely why I hedge.
So let's get to the harder question. Strip away the island and the jets. Why does Larry Ellison actually matter? What's the lasting thing?
I'll give you the sober version. Nearly every large organization on Earth, banks, airlines, governments, hospitals, runs on databases to keep track of who owes what, who's where, what's in stock. Oracle, for decades, was the default choice for the biggest and most demanding of those. That's an extraordinary position of quiet influence.
The plumbing of the modern economy.
That's the phrase, and I think it's earned. When you book a flight, when your bank balance updates, there's a very good chance somewhere in that chain is software of the kind Oracle pioneered commercially.
And he took an academic idea that its own inventor's company was sitting on, and he made it the standard.
Which is a real skill. We romanticize inventing things, but there's a whole separate genius in taking an invention and dragging it aggressively into the actual world where it gets used. That's the Ellison genius.
I'd agree with that, and I'd add the model of the acquisitive tech giant, buying up rivals to control the whole stack. Oracle wrote a big chunk of that playbook. You see echoes of it across the industry now.
Now, you said harder questions, so let's stay there. Because he's not a beloved figure the way some founders are. There's a real debate about him.
There is. The knock on Oracle for years, from customers this is that it's a hard company to deal with. Tough contracts, aggressive licensing, audits where they check whether you're using more than you paid for. some customers feel a bit locked in and squeezed.
That's a persistent complaint, and it's fair to air it. The counter-argument is that mission-critical software has to be reliable above all, and Oracle delivered reliability at a scale others couldn't match for a long time. You can hold both of those at once.
And that's the flip side of stickiness we talked about, isn't it? The same thing that makes you never leave is the thing that lets them squeeze.
The exact same coin. Depend on someone completely, and you've handed them your negotiating position. The customer's reliability is the vendor's leverage.
And the personal side? The persona?
Divisive. To admirers, he's the ultimate competitor, a self-made man from a hard start who built something colossal. To critics, the aggression tips into something less appealing. And I think, this is where I'd land, the same trait drives both readings. The relentlessness that built the company is the relentlessness that makes people wary of him.
And he's had this long third act, too. Stepped back from the chief executive role in the mid-2010s, but stayed deeply involved as chairman and technology chief. He didn't ride off. He kept his hands on it.
And bet the company hard on cloud computing, later than some rivals, and there was real doubt about whether Oracle had missed the wave. More recently, it's found a strong position, particularly tied to the enormous demand around artificial intelligence and the computing it needs. So even now, in his 80s, he's still in the game.
Still needs the enemy.
The rivalry engine never turns off.
So bring us home, each of you, the thing about Ellison you'll actually carry out of this conversation.
For me, it's the gap we opened on. The most boring possible product and one of the most vivid possible lives. And those aren't a contradiction. The boring product is exactly what funded the island. He understood that the unglamorous plumbing is where the real money and the real power sit. Everybody else was chasing shiny. He sold the pipes.
Mine's the IBM detail. Honestly, a great company invents a great idea and hesitates, and an outsider with almost nothing turns that hesitation into an empire. It's the most repeated lesson in business history, and somehow the hardest to actually learn. The invention is not the victory. The execution is the victory.
And mine's the shape of the whole life. A kid sent away as a baby, told he'd amount to nothing, drops out of college twice, drifts to California with no plan, and builds one of the most valuable companies on the planet. You don't have to admire everything he did to find that arc extraordinary.
And a little bit terrifying.
And a little bit terrifying, yes.
The two usually travel together.
They do. What a first go at this, you two. I've loved it. Larry Ellison, the man who made the plumbing pay for the island. Thanks for listening.
This episode was generated with AI by Demades.